The shocking truth. Jesus told about helping the needy. The final judgment. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. Matthew 25:35. I walked among them quietly, unseen by some, yet known by the hearts of many. The sun would rise over the hills of Galilee, spilling gold over the valleys, and the bustling life of towns and villages would awaken. I would see the merchants setting up their stalls, the children chasing one another with laughter that echoed through the narrow streets, and the women gathering water from the wells. It was a life filled with ordinary faces, ordinary chores, and ordinary struggles. Some days, I would sit quietly on the steps of a home, simply observing the rhythm of daily life, the laughter, the arguments, the fleeting joy, and the subtle despair that seemed to cling to certain hearts. And yet, even in this ordinary life, I felt a stirring. Something deep within me whispered that there was more than what appeared on the surface. I watched a widow hand over her last loaf of bread to feed her children, her hands trembling, her eyes shining with both worry and faith. I watched a poor man mend his worn sandals, silently enduring hunger while offering a small smile to a passing child. These scenes, ordinary as they were, etched themselves upon my heart. They reminded me that life was more than survival. It was compassion, kindness, and care for one another. The market stalls smelled of fresh bread and spices, but beneath the aroma was the quiet ache of unmet needs. Children tugged at their parents' hands, asking for small morsels, and parents whispered apologies they could not keep. Even in laughter, there was an undercurrent of hunger, a subtle reminder of the fragility of life. I observed the simple gestures, the sharing of a piece of fruit, the giving of water, the soft comfort offered to a crying child. And I realized that these small acts were the threads that held humanity together. Each day was ordinary, yes, but also sacred, for it revealed the hearts willing to give and those who had yet to learn the depth of love. In those moments, I felt a quiet joy and a longing at once. I saw the resilience in the human spirit, the subtle ways they cared for one another even when weary. Each smile, each offering, though small, was a spark of divine reflection. And I knew that every ordinary day held within it the seeds of eternal grace. Before I continue, dear listener, if you feel your heart stirred even a little, I invite you to subscribe to this channel so that together we can journey through stories of faith, hope, and love that transform hearts. But then, cracks began to show. They started as whispers, soft murmurs of suffering that crept into the corners of the world I was walking through. A famine had touched one village, leaving children pale and hungry. A man, once full of vigor, now hobbled along the road, holding a tiny basket with a single loaf, unsure if it would last until nightfall. Women cried silently in their homes as they rationed the last scraps of food, and men with empty stomachs and heavy hearts walked past, avoiding eye contact, ashamed of their need. I saw the crack widen as the cries grew louder and the needs became more desperate. The ordinary rhythm of life was disrupted. Mothers whispered prayers that seemed unheard. Fathers sighed in despair as they worked tirelessly, but returned with nothing to give their children. I wandered among them, invisibly carrying their burdens, feeling the weight of their hunger pressing into my soul. I remember seeing a young boy, no older than 10, sitting by the roadside, clutching a piece of stale bread he had found. His eyes met mine, and in that gaze was a mixture of hope and resignation. The crack in life's ordinary fabric was becoming visible, and yet many walked past, too busy or too indifferent to notice. The air was thick with fear and worry, and even the strong felt their spirit bending under the weight of uncertainty. It seemed as though the very essence of hope was at risk of being swallowed by despair. I felt a silent sorrow pressing down upon me, a grief that words could not express. Everywhere I looked, I saw the longing for care, for recognition, for simple acts of mercy. The cracks were not just in bread or water. They were in hearts hardened by neglect, and I knew that unless compassion stirred, these fractures could grow, leaving emptiness in their wake. The breaking point came one evening as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over the village. I witnessed a man collapse near a well, his body trembling from starvation. A woman ran to him with water, but she had nothing to offer in terms of food. Around them, people continued with their own lives, turning away from the pain that pressed so close to them. My heart ached with a weight that I could not contain. It was in that moment that I spoke these words to them, though many could not hear. Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Matthew 25:40. The weight of the world's indifference pressed into my soul. Hunger was not merely a lack of food, it was a cry for recognition, a plea for love, a silent call for care that so many ignored. Tears filled my eyes as I looked upon the suffering of the innocents, the children whose bellies ached, the mothers who wept in silence, the fathers whose strength had dwindled to nothing. And in that ache, the breaking point became clear. If the world would not care, if the world would not act, then the kingdom of heaven would bear witness to the hearts that had chosen compassion and those that had chosen neglect. I knelt beside a mother cradling her shivering child, feeling the cold seep into their bones. I heard the hollow moans of men too weak to walk and the whispered prayers of women holding empty baskets. Every face was a story, every cry a mirror of the suffering that hunger brings. It was in this silent storm that I realized the magnitude of neglect and the urgent need for hearts willing to act. The breaking point was not merely a moment. It was a call to awaken the compassion that lies within every soul. And I felt an urgency stir in my spirit, a call that would not wait for another day. The pain of the hungry echoed in my heart, demanding action and awakening purpose. Every breath, every step became a witness to the reality of suffering and the call to mercy. And then a shift occurred, not in the world, not in the crowds, but in the hearts of a few. I saw a woman kneeling beside a child, offering half of her bread without hesitation. I saw a man share his last bowl of lentils with a neighbor he barely knew. I watched as ordinary people became extraordinary in their compassion. In those small, quiet acts, the world shifted from despair toward hope. I walked among them and whispered, "When you feed the hungry, you feed me. When you offer water to the thirsty, you offer it to me. When you clothe the naked, you clothe me." Matthew 25:35-36. These words were not merely speech. They were a lifeline to the weary, a balm to the aching heart. I felt joy in the smallest offerings, a loaf of bread shared, a soup ladled into a bowl, hands held in empathy. It was here that I realized the power of choice. Every person who had the courage to act became a vessel of grace. Every hand extended, every heart opened, shifted the world, even if only for a moment. And I knew deep within that these moments of mercy were what the kingdom of heaven was built upon, not grand monuments or earthly riches, but the tender mercy of human hearts responding to need. I saw families come together, strangers linking arms to bring food to the forgotten, and eyes that had once been dim, now shining with the light of hope. The shift was subtle, yet profound, like dawn breaking over a darkened valley. Hearts once hardened by fear and indifference now beat in rhythm with compassion, and the world seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. It was proof that love, even in its smallest expression, can change the course of life itself. And I whispered to them quietly, a gentle reminder, your smallest deeds have the power to ripple through eternity. The shift begins in a single heart, a single hand, a single act of mercy. Let your love be the turning tide. The purpose of all that I had walked through became clear. I was not merely observing human life, I was revealing the way to eternal truth. The hungry would always hunger, the suffering would always cry, and yet those who listened with their hearts and responded with love would be counted among the faithful. I remember speaking to my disciples as we sat by a fire one evening. "Do you see?" I asked. "When you care for the least among you, you are caring for me. When you offer food to a starving child, when you offer a bowl of soup to the weary traveler, when you share your bread with a neighbor in need, you are touching eternity." Matthew 25:35. I realized that purpose was not found in wealth, status, or power. Purpose was found in action, in mercy, in love made tangible. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, carried a weight greater than gold, a value beyond measure. And I understood that my mission was not to simply speak of love, but to show it, to live it, and to call others to do the same. Purpose became a flame in my heart, burning brighter with each act of service I witnessed. Even the simplest gestures, a smile, a shared loaf, a comforting word, were sparks of divine truth. I urged my followers to see the eternal in the ordinary, to recognize that every life touched by kindness was a step toward the kingdom. And I knew that in the hearts willing to act, my message would live forever. I looked around and saw hope awakening in weary faces, a gentle reminder that every effort toward mercy was never wasted. The love shared among the least of these was a testament to the kingdom of heaven itself. I wanted my disciples and all who hear this story to understand that true purpose is measured not in days or possessions, but in love that transforms lives. And so, every act of kindness became a reflection of eternal grace, a beacon to guide hearts toward light. Years passed, yet the memory of their hunger remained vivid in my soul. I remembered the faces of the children, the mothers, the men who had stumbled through life with empty stomachs and heavy hearts, and in the eternal light I saw a vision of the final judgment, a gathering of all who had lived, their deeds laid bare. I spoke to them then with a voice that echoed through heaven and earth alike, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. Truly, I tell you, you did it to me." Matthew 25:35-40. There was no question, no argument, no hesitation. The acts of mercy, the sharing of bread, the giving of water, the extending of hands, spoke louder than any words. And so I say to you, my beloved listener, hear this not as a story from the past, but as a living call to action. Your small acts of kindness, your willingness to see and respond to the hungry and the hurting, have eternal significance. Open your heart, feed the hungry, offer comfort to the weary. Your love echoes into eternity. If your heart is moved, if you feel a stirring to act, subscribe to this channel now and join me in walking the path of compassion, mercy, and transformative love. Know this, every time you reach out to the hungry, every time you extend your hand to those in need, you are not just changing a life, you are touching mine. Let your deeds be an offering. Let your love be your witness. Do not wait for recognition or reward, for in the kingdom of heaven, even the smallest act of mercy shines like the brightest star. May you walk in compassion, act in mercy, and let your heart be moved to serve the least of these. And remember, when you feed the hungry, you feed me. In this world, moments of kindness ripple far beyond what you see. Each offering of bread, each cup of water, each act of love transforms more than one life. It transforms eternity. Let your heart lead, let your hands serve, and let your life be a testament to the mercy of God. Remember always, the kingdom is found in your choices, your care, and the love you pour into the lives of others.